Welcome to Mindful Live number 70. Yes, it's the 21st of April 2022. Welcome. I am Nathan Springer, your host for Mindful Life. Who else would it be? And I'm happy you are here. We're going to talk about issues. I'm running live right now on TikTok and YouTube only. Instagram is taking a rest up for the night, Instagram and their technical difficulties sometimes. So we leave Instagram to have a little chill and a little relax by itself out there for now. We started a lot later tonight than usual. Well, half hour later. I have a feeling like I may do that, If 9:30 slips by, you start exact on some other time. So, you're not guessworking when in between there someone is coming on. But yes, good to have you here. Welcome to Mindful Life. What are we going to talk about tonight? Well, there's the issue with the banks. That's making some news. Our Prime Minister is on the side of the banks, and some people said, well, the guy has to defend his friends, He has friends as bankers. How is he not going to defend them? And I think actually there is some more nuance in this whole thing. It isn't as simple as government and the banking financial sector in cahoots as usual to push out the poorer guy and harm us, as is undeniably regularly the case. But right before that, I'd touch on, as I was seeing in the TikTok live over there before, that the school violence thing is a concerning thing in our society. The amount of violence that school students, school children feel okay with just perpetrating on each other, like, how does one think that doing that is okay? How do you reach to the point understanding that everyone has a camera that can put you into a place where everyone can access this footage? Any and everyone can see you doing this act. You have that understanding and you still go ahead and do it. Listen, I think some of that is clear proof that under 18, these children are really sociopaths. They don't think through these things really, obviously. They're not thinking them through. Now, granted, many adults don't think them through either, but it is obviously more concentrated in young people. That's obviously not a well thought out thing. How are you fighting doing something obviously illegal or something like that, and then smiling in the camera towards it? Like, who does things like this? And there are so many videos of these fights, it's concerning. But as I was saying to the TikTok live before, this also seems obviously right in line with our society and the violence going on right now in our society. And the violence that is occurring in our society seems to be linked to that same kind of thing, being able to resolve conflicts. At least that's what the Commissioner of Police said. We'll get into that. We will get into that. But first off, we're going to talk about the banking sector and what the Prime Minister had to say about the banking sector in their defense. Now, here's the thing. That cannot be taken in a vacuum. He wasn't just defending the banking sector totally in general. It was very specific. Let's see what it was specifically about. Once you're inside of the live, make sure to hit that like button. If you have not yet subscribed to Nathan Springer over on YouTube, go over there and hit that subscribe button. All these videos are found there after they are uploaded. So yeah, you will see them there and you could watch the live there also if you so feel obliged. All right. Innocent until proven guilty. PM joins roundtable talks with U.S. Congresswoman in Barbados. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley yesterday spoke out against unfairness and discrimination involved in the characterization of Caribbean banks as unsafe and fraught with risks by the developed world. In a defense of the Caribbean banking sector, the Prime Minister said Caribbean banks were presumed to be and therefore treated as guilty of violations which they did not commit. Addressing the roundtable discussion on de-risking and correspondent banking co-hosted by the Chairman of the United States House Committee on Financial Services, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and we will pause right there. So here's the issue. Let's paint this picture a bit. What the Prime Minister is complaining about to some extent here is that the developed world looks at our banking sector and says, well, this banking sector is obviously more corrupt than ours, so we will have some limitations and some rules in how we deal with them because these banking sectors are not up to scratch, so we have some limitations too. hold them in that section. And what the Prime Minister is saying is you cannot just say something like that and hold them in this lower regard without any evidence of such. And then I found it rich that the person on the American side who was representing them, as we speak about, de-risking the Caribbean banking sector and, making things open and honest, and there is an overtone of corruption and dishonest movements and thing here, is one Maxine Waters. Now, as I've said before, I have this habit of reading news from different places in the world. And there was an article from, when was this? April 15th. How long ago that was? 6 days. Yes, 6 days ago. The New York Post. Maxine Waters adds to daughters 1.2 million in campaign payments after latest 24,000 windfall. Strange, innit? Strange. Very strange. Rep. Maxine Waters shelled out 24,000 in campaign funds to her daughter for work on the lawmakers' re-election campaign in the first quarter of this year, according to records from the Federal Election Commission. The records indicate that Karen Waters was paid for her mother's campaign committee, Citizens for Waters, in installments of $5,000 and $3,000, and for slate mailer management, whatever that means, fees. Karen Waters was paid a total of $8,000 on January 5th. January 31st and March 21st. In all, the younger Waters has received more than 1.2 million, that's on the official books, since 2003 for campaign services. Yes. And it's not only her daughter that it is reputed from here. Miss Waters is notoriously reputed to be involved in many shady dealings with money. And if you're wondering what they're talking about with the daughter there, the general idea is they go out and get finances to get re-elected, to run a political campaign. They get finances there. The finances intention, the aim of the finances would be to help get you re-elected. So you do advertisements, etc. with those finances. And the thing with that, why that is such a strange thing, is because some company, let's say Amazon, decides to give you a couple $1 million. And they say, ostensibly, this is to help you get re-elected. Run some ads and do some outreach and pay some staff with this money. If you could just now hire your daughter as staff and say that I'll pay my daughter $1.2 million to do work for me on my campaign in re-election, then basically that's straight a bribe from Amazon straight through you into your family. And what would they give you that money for? I think Waters was also involved in some insider trading. A lot of insider trading. Not some, a lot. Waters is notorious. So I just found it very strange on the face of it. And this is why I say there's a little more nuance to it than just the Prime Minister defending his banker friends. The US and a lot of those developed countries, they reek of hypocrisy when they talk about these matters, and they talk about the Caribbean and how it may be unsafe and criminals are doing their work there and etc. and banking there. Yeah, the Prime Minister has a point there. Everything Prime Minister Motley has said I endorse because it represents all of our interests and our understanding of the situation. Arbitrary self-serving action from the developed world seeking to say, as we interpret it, you may enter but don't go too far. That is what they are saying to us in the banking business. And banking is something that we can do, something that we must be allowed to do. And it represents successful diversification of the economies in the Caribbean. And Prime Minister Motley put it very clearly that the stereotyping that goes on in the management of the issue of safe banking, that you can be assumed to misbehave by how you look or where you live, and therefore you are put on a list, convicted of misbehavior. So that is the problem that Dr. Rowley was talking about. That the fact is, because these banks are Caribbean banks, they don't need to be, there isn't need for any proof of them doing anything wrong for them to be listed on some kind of unsafe banking list. And there are repercussions to this. Disproportionate action. Rowley said disproportionate action, and disproportionate action. Rowley said disproportionate focus and disproportionate action was taken against Caribbean banks while money was being laundered in the big money centers. Listen to this point that Dr. Rowley made, and I think this is a fair point actually. We are now in great consternation observing the epiphany in London and elsewhere that these people, kleptocrats referring to the Russian oligarchs, and they have been hiding their monies in Mayfair. And that is a very good point. Listen. If the US and all of these Western developed first world countries are saying that the Russian oligarchs, the wealthy people at the head and at the leadership inside of Russia, all of those billionaires and them, that all of them are kleptocrats, they are thieves and corrupt individuals that are milking Russia of its resources and stealing it for their own benefits. If that is what the West says, then how come all of these Russian oligarchs had so much resources inside of all of these Western countries? How come there was so many things that could have been sanctioned against? How come? If their banking is so much safer. And that is the point the Prime Minister was making there, which I think is a fair point. It's sad that TNT and the Caribbean always lobby the sleaziest members of the DNC, because it's often the sleaziest members of the DNC that are most interested in making partners outside of the country. The thing is, in the United States, very often on the other side of the political divide, they are more interested in internal matters and settling internal matters. So very likely they may say they have no interest in speaking to CARICOM and resolving CARICOM banking matters when they have a migrant crisis at their border, and that may be the kind of point that they try to make on it. So that's why very often we see the DNC side would be the side making that kind of outreach, and the Caribbean diaspora inside of the United States, they generally lean a certain political side also. So I'm sure that plays no small part. And it leads us to ask, had the Ukrainians not been bearing the brunt of this attack, what would have been happening to the money laundering and the encouragement? Disproportionate action that has been taken in situations where we are thriving to have economies survive, because let me say to our colleagues from North America, if we cannot grow bananas, we cannot produce sugar, we cannot sell clothing, we can't sell fish, and we can't bank, what kind of economy do you think would exist in the islands of the Caribbean? Rowley went on there to make a point, seemingly saying that if you do not allow the Caribbean to get into these industries, then you are creating a situation where very likely these Caribbean countries would become security threats to the United States itself, and that's kind of true. That's kind of true. If there isn't any economy that is linked to the United States inside of the Caribbean, very likely it would be linked to some other global power or some other underworld power possibly, and that would not be, generally speaking, in the interest of the United States. Now, there may be another question to ask on whether linking into the interest of the United States may even be in our best interest. There may be a question there to ask, but on the side of the United States, I think letting the Caribbean in is in their best interest. So that there is the main crux of the point Dr. Rowley was saying. That it wasn't just a general defense of the banking sector, that my banking buddies are fine and we should allow the bankers to do whatever they like. It wasn't that. To be fair to Dr. Rowley out there, it wasn't just in defense of bankers. It was in comparison with the United States and the developed world and how they treat our bankers compared to their own bankers, and seeing what is the reason, what is the underlying reason behind this. Is there a justifiable underlying reason for this? And understandably, the effect of this banking limitation is felt in the Caribbean, where it is more difficult for Caribbean people to get involved oftentimes in some of these international opportunities because we are excluded and our banks cannot access certain things as easily. So it is felt even in doing business in the Caribbean. So that may be a benefit to doing business in the a boost to doing business in the Caribbean if it changes in due time as they are seeking to do right now. Another change that may be a boost for Caribbean doing business, for people doing business in the Caribbean, is the roaming cuts that they are planning. Now, for anyone who has traveled outside of Trinidad or around in the Caribbean, if you use your phone anywhere in the Caribbean, you'd understand that the prices get jacked up very high very quickly. And there's discussion right now to change that. I like that kind of direction. Now, I find very often we see discussion, and one of the most annoying terms in modern times is when you hear people talk about that conversation, but you're not ready for that conversation. And it's very important that we have this conversation. And this introduces the conversation, and it starts the conversation. And let's have a conversation and everyone is conversing and no one is solving anything. Now, I kind of have a problem with that because it seems like too many conversations are had. But the conversation is at least being had right now about cutting those roaming costs. Because if people think about it, if people can move around the Caribbean and use their phone just like they can in their home country, that would open a lot of opportunities. And previously, the Antiguan Prime Minister, since last year, he was talking about dropping the taxes for inter-island transport. The fact of the matter is I cannot remember the number. It keeps slipping my mind, but it is actually ridiculously high when you hear the percentage of your airfare that you pay to travel within the Caribbean, the percentage of it that just goes raw to taxes. And that's insane. And I think that's a kind of relic of the colonial past if you're talking about unifying the Caribbean better. Now, I'm not saying that the Caribbean should be under any one government. I don't agree with that. I don't think that would work. But if you're talking about making trade easier between the Caribbean countries, I think making transport cheaper should be a real thing. And not necessarily making it falsely cheaper. I'm not talking here about subsidizing it. And this is kind of the problem with government. This is one of my problems with government. It's like they never want to just leave something as is. It's either, if it's beneficial, they tax it and take the money. If it's difficult, then they say, well, we will give you some money to do it. So they're taking money from where you're gaining and then giving you money to help you take care of something else. Well, maybe if you don't take the money in the other area, then you don't need to give me the money there. If you take less taxes, you'd need to give less subsidies. So if the Caribbean governments decrease the taxes on inter-island travel and make inter-island travel much more affordable, how much more regional travel do you think there would be? And if you combine that with on par mobile rates, and we know that the modern world exists to a large extent online. If you have reasonable price, you could pay, let's say, $800 to $1,000 and fly out to any Caribbean island. And while there, you could use your same data plan that you were running on while you were home. Many more people will do that. People, listen, I think if they do that, those Caribbean Airlines, the company, Cal Caribbean Airlines, Liat, etc., they may be booked out with just inter-island travel. There are lots of people who are just beneath the monetary level to spend what it needs to travel inside of the Caribbean. And if they do get that amount of money, they're going to watch and say, well, I might rather take a trip to Florida than go to some Caribbean island. Now, that's part of the reasoning that the Antiguan Prime Minister was saying in the first place. Yes, you would lose some revenue in taxes, but if you get more people coming into the country, when people come into your country, what do you think they do? They spend money. they spend money. So you would have more people coming in, spending more money, and you'd very likely gain back more instead of how much you gained in the taxes. Those taxes very likely scared more people away and are scaring more people away from coming and giving you more resources in spending money as tourists. I agree fully with that. And that's the thing, with forcing people to pay and taxes, etc., etc., etc. There is a limit to it. There is a limit to it where, yes, you could charge more for it and you may make more money on each thing, but then the decrease in the amount of people that do it is going to hurt your bottom line. To me, when I hear travel in the Caribbean, it seems like the majority of travel in the Caribbean is sports and work. That's it. If it's not for sports and work, people aren't traveling in the Caribbean, within the Caribbean. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. If you look, for example, at Tobago and what is happening in Tobago off of majority Trinidad tourism. Tobago has a lot of tourism events, a lot of tourism activities directly aimed at the Trinidad tourism market. And there are tourists from Trinidad. If you could take all of our tourist dollars and spend it only in the Caribbean, all of the Caribbean's tourist dollars are spent within the Caribbean. That will be splendid. And I think we would actually gain more from that. But as I said it there and it triggered the thought in my mind. Talking about increasing the price and making people pay and whether they actually would pay more. How many of you are paying attention to what's going on with Netflix? I know it's a hard segue, like we were talking about Caribbean and making CARICOM better, but then we switch over to Netflix. You all see what's going on with Netflix? Netflix stock prices are dropping. Netflix is in some trouble. They're in some trouble. Now, it's kind of understandable to some extent. Netflix had a massive growth spike during the pandemic because everyone was locked inside of their homes and they had nothing else to do but watch Netflix and binge watch shows. So Netflix had a spike in engagement, a spike in customers. Then, for the first time in quite some time, Caribbean governments need to understand that increased government revenue and economic growth are not the same. Correct. For some time, they have had now the first decrease in subscribers for some time now. Some people are actually laying some of the blame at the feet of Elon Musk, the guy that seems to be ever present in the news these days, because he tweeted out the day before they had that massive drop in stock prices, he tweeted out something like Netflix is woke garbage or something to that effect, something along those lines. And for those of you who are up to date with internet culture, you would know that many people voice their annoyance that so many of the Netflix shows seem to be ideologically empowered. If you look at percentages in society, if you look at how many people are homosexuals in society, it's a very low percentage. But then if you look at it in Netflix shows, you would assume that 50% of the people in society are gay. And some people, listen, I don't think you could force people to enjoy things that they don't enjoy. You can't really force people like that. And they have been doing some of that. And I think some of that would have been cutting in on their support. So they're seeing some of that leaks. But in response to some of that leaks, as shares plunge, Netflix takes aim at password sharing. A sharp drop in subscribers sent Netflix shares into freefall Wednesday, forcing the company to consider experimenting with ads and hold on to your remote, cracking down on millions of freeloaders who use passwords shared by friends or family. Here's the thing. Netflix became popular because of how Netflix functions. If Netflix changes how it functions, do you think they would remain popular? Elon Musk woke, not in the modern understanding of woke at least. Netflix's customer base fell by 200,000 subscribers during the January-March quarter. The first contraction the service the streaming service has seen since it became available throughout most of the world other than China 6 years ago. The drop stemmed in part from Netflix's decision to withdraw from Russia to protest the war against Ukraine, resulting in a loss of 700,000 subscribers. Netflix projected a loss of another 2 million subscribers in the current April-June quarter. The steep erosion, which follows a year of progressively slower growth, has given Netflix investors major jitters. The company's stock was down as much as 37% midday Wednesday. If the stock closes at this level, the sell-off will have wiped out nearly 2/3 of Netflix's market value. Wow. The impact on current Netflix customers won't be clear for some time. To David Lewis in Norwalk, Connecticut, it doesn't seem like a big deal. Listen, I think Netflix paid for this article. Listen to this guy talk here. Some guy from Connecticut. Lewis shares a premium plan with his 3 adult children and some of their friends and says they will keep it, even if they have to cut off the friends and each pay for their own accounts. What? Listen, I'll let you all know. I have my own Netflix account. I am the payer on my Netflix account. But my Netflix account is the premium one that allows multiple devices. I can't remember how many devices it is offhand, but multiple devices. If you attempt to tell me that every single person using my account must pay their own fees, and then the only person that gets to use Netflix is me for that fee that I'm currently paying, well, I will tell you what I'll do. I will cancel that account because, to be very honest, I don't watch that much Netflix. It's more the people around me who watch more of my Netflix account. And if you're telling me that every one of them are going to have to pay for that, I'm sorry, but yeah, that's not going to work. Here's the thing. It's what happened in society was piracy blossomed in the mid-2000s. 2009, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, around there. Piracy was beautiful out there. But then, through subscription services, Spotify, YouTube, and Netflix, they were able to squash piracy with just competition. People didn't mind paying a reasonable price for the entertainment. People didn't mind. It's okay. People will pay for it. They're just not going to pay that much because there's a certain level people hold entertainment at. If you attempt to make them pay more than the level they hold entertainment at, they will not buy it or they will find another way to get it. I think what is actually happening now, by Disney Plus creating their own, HBO Max creating their own, everyone has their own streaming services, and if you want to get a nice all-around view of shows, you'd have to subscribe to 4 different streaming services. Yeah, that's kind of back to the same way it was before. We saw what people did when it was back to that way before. Let's just say that I feel a comeback of the Pirates Bay.se or whatever their name is right now. I feel they're going to start making a very strong comeback because that is what is going to happen. If people cannot access it for a reasonable price, they are not going to pay more for it. Listen, all those Trinidadians binge watching Netflix on other people's passwords, if you tell them that they have to pay to watch those Bridgerton or whatever nonsense they're watching, if you want to feel disappointed in Trinidad and Tobago, go watch what Trinidad and Tobago's top 10 shows on Netflix usually are. That, without a doubt, almost always disappoints me. Like, who in Trinidad and Tobago is watching this garbage? Anyway, that's beside the point. If you tell them they have to pay to do it, listen, they're not going to do it. That's what's going to happen. We spoke about this yesterday. Trinidad already has a pretty known custom where we are less willing to pay market value for certain things. We are paying half the market value for gas and oil, and we aren't okay with that. If WASA try to raise their rates to market value, I will assure you there would be some protests out there. So I think Netflix would torpedo their own company if they do something like this. If they attempt to squeeze out more money out of their current subscribers, out of these people that still view them they're going to lose more money. That I don't. And now, granted, I am not the CEO of Netflix. What do I know? But I just feel like looking at human nature. That's not how you do it. You can't attempt to squeeze out more money out of the few people that still like you. Well, not that few, but out of the people that still like you. Your attempt should be to try and grow your customer base, but to try and squeeze it out of people who currently like you and currently like the setup is going to be a difficult ask, and I think you may throw off and throw out a lot more people that way. All right. That's all I have for now for this later running of the Mindful Life. I thank you for being here. I know we haven't done that afterlife in a while, but it's been a busy week. So, mans need sleep too. All right. Any comments or further questions before we dive out there? They're growing only in Asia Pacific and only slight. Good night. Could you just state the days and time that you have since starting lives, please? I'm sorry, Mantis Shadow. I am sorry. It's supposed to be 9:30 every day. It's supposed to be a massive stock price drop. I believe it coordinated with global reopenings and lockdown removals, as well as the subscription cost increase. Yeah, it's a few things that caused that. Night, Nisi. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here first, as usual, too. Always appreciated. Truly. Good night, everyone. It was nice. Tonight is what? Thursday. So yes, we would be here again tomorrow. And I will see you then. Peace. Hope you educated, informed, or entertained. Laters. Looking to see if anything drops up before I leave. Don't forget to plug the YouTube before you leave. Thank you, Janti. As per usual, if you are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, head over to YouTube over there. Find Nathan Springer on YouTube. You can find all of the previous lives there, and you can find some other content there too. And look at the lives are a little different on YouTube because you get the articles, etc. So be sure to head over to YouTube, subscribe to Nathan Springer, drop a like whenever you view a video, drop a comment if you have something to say, and